The transmission arrived during the annual Harvest Festival on New Helsinki. Children were laughing in the wheat fields that stretched across the colony's southern continent. Families gathered around tables heavy with food grown in alien soil that humans had learned to love. Nobody looked up at the sky until the first Valthari warship broke through the clouds. Ambassador Diane Webb was 300 light-years away when she received the emergency alert. She stood in the Galactic Council chamber, surrounded by representatives of 47 species, and watched her datapad fill with death. The footage showed orbital bombardment platforms positioning themselves above population centers. It showed energy beams turning cities into craters. It showed 47 million people dying in fire and screaming silence. The Valthari delegation sat across the chamber with their scaled faces showing nothing. Their kind had ruled a dozen star systems for 10,000 years. They viewed humanity as insects that had somehow crawled into the halls of power. Fleet Admiral Rhinoth, their military leader, had broadcast his message across all frequencies. He declared that humans should accept their place as servants or face extinction. He called it mercy. Webb turned off her datapad. Her hands did not shake. Her voice did not break. She looked at the assembled council members and saw what she expected. The Melori shifted uncomfortably in their water tanks. The Keth clicked their mandibles and studied the ceiling. The Valorn wrapped their tentacles tighter and refused to meet her eyes. Not one species spoke against the massacre. Not one voice rose in humanity's defense. Counselor Breath of the Melori finally broke the silence. He expressed regret for the loss of life. He suggested that humanity consider negotiation. He reminded everyone that the Valthari were a founding member of the Council and that certain allowances must be made for cultural differences. Cultural differences, 47 million dead, and he called it a cultural difference. Webb stood, the chamber fell quiet. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes, but something in her posture made the nearest delegates lean away. She spoke 5 words that would echo through galactic history. "You will remember this day." She walked out without looking back. On Mars, Admiral Yuki Tanaka knelt before a small grave marker in the memorial gardens outside Olympus. City, her daughter had been 7 when the illness took her. Her husband had died in a pirate raid 3 years later. She had buried everything soft inside herself in this red soil. When her communicator buzzed with priority orders, she read them twice and then smiled for the first time in years. It was not a pleasant smile. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, in facilities that appeared on no official record, technicians began activating systems that had waited dormant for decades. The Prometheus protocols had been created in secret by leaders who understood a simple truth. The galaxy was old and cruel, and humanity was young and alone. Every species they met had claws or venom or psychic abilities. Humans had none of these things. Humans had only their minds and their memory of what they had done to each other throughout history. The protocols were designed for the worst possible scenario. They assumed humanity would face an enemy that outmatched them in every conventional way. They assumed the galaxy would offer no help. They assumed survival would require becoming something terrible. Nobody had ever wanted to use them. Fleet Admiral Rhinoth celebrated his victory with a parade through the Valthari capital. His face was projected on screens across 12 worlds. He spoke of human weakness, of how easily they broke, of how their colony had burned like dry grass. He promised that Earth itself would soon follow. The crowds cheered and chanted his name. In her quarters aboard the diplomatic vessel returning to Earth, Ambassador Webb drafted her report. She detailed every species that had remained silent. She noted every delegate who had looked away. She recorded the exact words Counselor Breath had used. This document would become evidence in trials that the galaxy could not yet imagine. The journey home took 11 days. Webb spent them in communication with Earth's government, with military commanders, with intelligence chiefs who had been preparing for this moment in the shadows. By the time her ship entered Sol system, every human world had received the same message. Every factory had begun conversion. Every soldier had been recalled to duty. The Valthari expected tears and surrender. They expected humanity to beg the Council for intervention. They expected the weak species to accept its punishment and fall in line. They had made a mistake that would cost them everything. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was patient. Humanity had spent 18 years in the galactic community learning, watching, and preparing for the day when patience would no longer be enough. That day had arrived. In her ready room aboard the flagship Remembrance, Admiral Tanaka reviewed the fleet assignments one final time. 300 vessels of war awaited her command, ships the Council had never seen, weapons that had never been tested outside of simulation, crews who had trained in secret for a conflict everyone prayed would never come. She thought of her daughter. She thought of 47 million strangers who had become her responsibility. She thought of the silence in that council chamber. Then she began planning the extinction of Valthari military power. 3 weeks of silence made the galaxy nervous. Every species expected humanity to react somehow. They expected crying broadcasts, desperate pleas to the Council, perhaps a futile counterattack by their small defensive fleet. Instead, they received nothing. Human space went dark. Trade ships stopped departing. Communication channels closed. It was as if Earth had simply vanished. Counselor Breath requested a private meeting with Ambassador Webb. He traveled to the neutral station at the edge of human territory and waited for 6 hours before she agreed to see him. When she finally appeared, her face showed nothing. Her eyes were empty windows looking out at something far away. He offered condolences. He offered advice. He explained how younger species must learn to accept their position in the galactic hierarchy. The Valthari were powerful and proud, but they could be reasoned with. Perhaps if humanity offered certain concessions, territories, resources, the violence could end. Perhaps they could even maintain most of their colonies if they showed proper respect. Webb listened without interrupting. When Breath finished, she thanked him for his concern and escorted him back to his ship. She said nothing else. The Mallory diplomat left more unsettled than when he arrived. He reported to the Council that humans appeared to be in shock, unable to process their loss. The Council accepted this explanation because it fit their expectations. They could not have been more wrong. Behind Jupiter's largest moon, hidden from every scanner and telescope in the galaxy, humanity's true fleet assembled. Admiral Tanaka stood in the command center of a vessel twice the size of anything the Council had. Ever registered, the Remembrance was surrounded by 300 warships that officially did not exist. Their hulls were black and angular, designed to absorb sensor waves. Their weapons systems had been developed in laboratories buried beneath mountains on 4 different worlds. The Prometheus protocols had never been about defense. They were about absolute victory against any threat. Human engineers had studied every species in the Council. They had identified weaknesses in every known weapons system, shield technology, and tactical doctrine. They had built counters for all of them. Tanaka addressed her captains through encrypted channels. She told them what they already knew. 47 million humans had died because the galaxy considered them weak. The Council had watched and done nothing because they believed humanity could not fight back. Every species had made calculations based on the small defensive fleet that Earth publicly maintained. Those calculations were about to prove fatal. On the Valthari homeworld, soldier first-rank Dela reviewed intelligence reports in her cramped quarters. She was young for her rank, only 40 cycles old, but she had earned her position through skill rather than family connections. Something about the human silence troubled her. She had studied their history, their wars, their capacity for both creation and destruction. She submitted a report to her superiors warning that humans might be more dangerous than they appeared. The report was rejected. Her commanding officer told her that humans were soft creatures from a soft world. Their single planet had not even achieved unity until recently. They had no warrior tradition worth respecting. Dela did not argue. She simply began making personal preparations. She moved her family to a rural province far from military targets. She told them it was for health reasons. She did not tell them she expected fire to fall from the sky. Human intelligence operatives had spread across the galaxy during 18 years of peaceful membership. They worked as traders, technicians, entertainers, and servants. Nobody paid attention to the quiet humans who fixed engines and cleaned hallways. Nobody noticed them recording fleet movements, mapping defense networks, and identifying every military installation in Valthari space. The information flowed back to Earth through channels, so deeply encrypted that Council code breakers would need centuries to crack them. By the time the Valthari realized they had been infiltrated, it would be far too late. In the Council chamber, Fleet Admiral Rhinoth broadcast a new demand. He gave humanity 30 days to surrender their remaining colonies and accept Valthari governance. Failure to comply would result in the complete destruction of Earth itself. He spoke with the confidence of someone who had never faced real opposition. Ambassador Webb received the ultimatum aboard her ship. She read it carefully and then drafted a response. She informed the Council that humanity would address the situation in person. She requested an emergency session. She gave no indication of what she planned to say. The galaxy assumed surrender was coming. Betting pools opened on various worlds, wagering on how much territory humans would lose. Comedians made jokes about the brief human experiment in space travel. Military academies used New Helsinki as an example of how inferior species should be handled. Admiral Tanaka watched these broadcasts in her ready room and felt something cold settle into her bones. It was not anger. Anger burns hot and fades. This was something deeper, older, more patient. This was the same feeling her ancestors had known when they prepared for battles that would determine survival. She opened a channel to her fleet. She told them the time was almost here. She told them to remember New Helsinki. She told them what they were about to do would change everything. The galaxy had made its choice. Humanity would make its answer. Every seat in the Grand Council chamber was filled for the first time in 300 years. Species that normally sent junior delegates had dispatched their highest leaders. The Valthari delegation occupied the center platform, their scales gleaming under ceremonial lights. Fleet Admiral Rhinoth himself had traveled from his homeworld to witness what he assumed would be humanity's final humiliation. Ambassador Webb entered through the main doors rather than the diplomatic side entrance. She wore not the flowing robes of a council member, but the dark uniform of Earth's military service. Medals covered her chest, each one representing conflicts the galaxy knew nothing about. She walked alone, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. The chamber watched her approach the speaker's platform. Some delegates whispered to each other, others simply stared. The Mallory counselor breath shifted nervously in his water tank. He had seen something in Webb's eyes during their private meeting, something that made his ancient instincts scream warnings. Webb activated the holographic display and began projecting images. New Helsinki before the attack, with its golden wheat fields and laughing children. New Helsinki during the attack, with fire falling from orbit. New Helsinki after, with nothing but glass craters where cities had stood. She showed 47 million faces, cycling through them faster than the eye could follow, each one a person who had lived and dreamed and died. She did not speak while the images played. She let them speak for themselves. When the display ended, she addressed the council in a voice that carried to every corner. She thanked them for their attention during humanity's time of grief. She acknowledged the Valthari's military superiority. She recognized that the council had chosen not to intervene. Then her tone changed. She announced that humanity was formally withdrawing from the Galactic Council. Effective immediately, all treaties were void. All trade agreements were canceled. All mutual defense pacts were dissolved. Humanity would handle its affairs alone, as it apparently always had been. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted questions. The Keth delegation demanded explanations. Councillor Breath tried to call for order. Only the Valthari remained calm, their expressions showing amusement at what they perceived as a tantrum. Fleet Admiral Rhinoth stood and addressed Webb directly. He told her that withdrawal meant nothing. Humanity had no power to resist Valthari will. Surrender was the only option. Perhaps if she begged prettily enough, he would allow some humans to survive as servants. Webb looked at him with an expression that made several nearby delegates physically recoil. She spoke clearly so that every translator in the room would capture her words perfectly. She gave the Valthari 12 hours to surrender unconditionally. She demanded the arrest of all military commanders responsible for New Helsinki. She required reparations that would cripple their economy for generations. The chamber fell silent. Even the automated translation system seemed to pause. Reinoth laughed. The sound was harsh and filled with genuine amusement. He asked if the human ambassador had lost her mind. He reminded everyone that Valthari fleets numbered in the thousands. He pointed out that humanity's registered vessels could be destroyed in an afternoon. Webb smiled. It was the most terrifying expression anyone in that chamber had ever seen. She told Reinoth that humanity's registered vessels were not humanity's only vessels. She told him that the silence of the past 3 weeks had not been grief, but preparation. She told him that every species in the galaxy had made the same mistake about humans. They saw a young species with no natural weapons. They saw soft bodies and short lifespans. They saw a single homeworld and 3 small colonies. They assumed this meant weakness. They forgot that humans evolved on a world that tried to kill them every single day. They forgot that humans had survived ice ages, plagues, and wars against themselves. They forgot that the deadliest creature in any room was often the one that appeared harmless. Webb turned to address the full council. She told them they had one chance to stand with humanity, one chance to condemn what had been done, one chance to choose the right side of history. Nobody spoke. She nodded as if this was expected. She collected her materials and walked toward the exit. At the door, she paused and delivered her final words. "You watched our children burn. Remember that when the burning starts." She left. The chamber remained silent for a long time. Then the first emergency alerts began flooding in from the edge of Valthari space. Impossible energy signatures, vessels appearing where no vessels should be, and a single broadcast on all frequencies. Admiral Tanaka's voice, calm and cold. "The 12 hours have expired. We are coming." Sensor operators on the Valthari defense station above their homeworld died, still trying to understand what they were seeing. Human ships had not traveled through monitored space lanes. They had not triggered early warning systems. They simply appeared, as if stepping through invisible doors in reality itself. 300 vessels materialized simultaneously above the Valthari's 3 most important military installations. Their hulls were darker than space itself. Their weapons were already charging. Admiral Tanaka's flagship hung directly above the orbital platform that had coordinated the new Helsinki bombardment. Fleet Admiral Reinoth was still in transit from the Council when the attack began. He watched from his command ship as his empire's greatest weapons were systematically erased. The defense. Platforms tried to target the human vessels, but their targeting systems returned only errors. The black ship seemed to exist in spaces between normal matter. Human weapons technology had advanced far beyond what anyone suspected. Directed energy beams cut through Valthari shields like sunlight through fog. Missiles that appeared to be destroyed simply reformed and continued their trajectories. Electronic warfare systems turned the Valthari's own defense networks against them. The Battle of Valthari Prime lasted 4 hours. It was not truly a battle. It was an execution. Reinoth finally reached his homeworld as the last of the orbital defenses crumbled. He rallied what remained of the home fleet, 600 warships against the human 300. He ordered a traditional pincer formation, the same tactic that had crushed a dozen species. His captains obeyed without question. Tanaka did not engage in traditional formation. Her ships scattered like startled birds, then reformed in patterns that made no geometric sense. They appeared to retreat, drawing the Valthari into pursuit. Then they were suddenly behind their enemies, firing into unshielded engine sections. Human tactical doctrine was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. It drew from thousands of years of warfare on a single planet where survival demanded constant adaptation. It incorporated lessons from ancient cavalry charges and modern cyber warfare. It treated space combat as a three-dimensional chess game where the rules could change at any moment. The Valthari lost 200 ships in the first hour. They lost another 100 trying to regroup. Their communications were jammed. Their sensors showed phantom targets everywhere. Their weapons struck only empty space where human ships had been moments before. Soldier First-Rank Dela crouched in an escape pod as her cruiser broke apart around her. She had known this was coming. She had tried to warn her people. Now she could only watch through a tiny viewport as everything she had feared came true. The human ships ignored the escape pods. They ignored the civilian transports fleeing the combat zone. Admiral Tanaka had given explicit orders, only military targets, only those who chose to carry weapons. Humanity would not become what they were fighting against. Counselor Breath observed from a hidden diplomatic vessel at the system's edge. He was supposed to be neutral, supposed to maintain the Council's position of non-intervention. Instead, he found himself trembling as he recorded footage that would forever change how the galaxy viewed humanity. These were not the soft, weak creatures the Council had dismissed. These were apex predators who had simply chosen to wear civilization like a comfortable coat. The coat was off now, and what lay beneath was terrifying. Rhinoth's flagship burned in space. The fleet admiral had refused to surrender, refused to accept that his species could lose to inferior beings. He died still giving orders that nobody could hear. By the end of the fourth hour, Valthari military power effectively ceased to exist. Their fleet was debris. Their orbital installations were slag. Their ground-based command centers had been struck with precision weapons that killed only soldiers. Tanaka broadcast on open frequencies. She told the surviving Valthari that the war could end now. She told them their civilians were safe. She told them all she required was the arrest of commanders responsible for New Helsinki. The response came from the Valthari High Council. They refused. They called her a barbarian. They promised that the galaxy would unite against human aggression. Tanaka's reply was simple. The human fleet began moving toward the Valthari homeworld. Not to bombard it, not to destroy cities, but to demonstrate that they could reach it whenever they chose, to show that nothing could stop them, to make clear that humanity's mercy was a choice, not a limitation. The Valthari High Council watched the black ships descend through their atmosphere, hover above their capital city, and simply wait. The message was clear: surrender or watch your world burn as New Helsinki burned. The choice was theirs. Rain fell on the Valthari capital for the first time in recorded memory. The atmospheric processors had been damaged during the occupation, and weather patterns were slowly returning to their natural state. Some of the older citizens considered it a sign. Others just got wet. 6 months had passed since the surrender. The Valthari Dominion existed only in history files now. Their military had been completely dismantled. Their 12 star systems were governed by a provisional administration that answered to Earth. 47 of their highest commanders had faced trial for the massacre of New Helsinki. The executions were carried out with clinical precision, one commander for each million. Dead Admiral Tanaka had insisted on this number. It was not revenge, it was arithmetic. Ambassador Webb stood before the Galactic Council once again. This time, every species representative rose as she entered. It was a gesture of respect that had never been offered to humans before. Fear had a way of creating courtesy. She presented humanity's terms for rejoining the Council: full voting rights on all matters, permanent membership on the Security Committee, and a new charter that required member species to respond to unprovoked aggression or face immediate expulsion. Neutrality was no longer acceptable. Silence in the face of atrocity was now formally recognized as complicity. The vote was unanimous, not a single delegate opposed. Some voted eagerly, hoping to position themselves as humanity's allies. Others voted with trembling hands, terrified of what refusal might bring. The result was the same. Counselor Breath approached Webb after the session. He wanted to apologize, to explain that Mallory customs prevented direct intervention, to assure her that he had personally felt great sympathy during the crisis. Webb listened politely and then told him that sympathy was worthless without action. She suggested he remember that lesson. In a small room aboard a human medical vessel, Soldier First Rank Dale awoke from reconstructive surgery. She had spent 3 months in a healing tank after her escape pod was recovered. Human doctors had rebuilt her shattered bones and damaged organs. She had expected execution once she recovered. Instead, she found Admiral Tanaka sitting beside her bed. The Admiral explained that the war was over. The killing was finished. Now came the harder work of rebuilding. The Valthari people needed leaders who understood both what had happened and why. They needed voices who could help their species find a new path. Dela asked why she had been chosen. She was nobody important, just a soldier who had sent warnings that nobody heeded. Tanaka told her that was exactly why. She had seen the truth when her superiors were blind. She had tried to prevent disaster when everyone else celebrated coming victory. That kind of courage was rare. That kind of wisdom was precious. She offered Dela a position in the Reconstruction government, a chance to help her people heal, a chance to build something better from the ashes of empire. Dela accepted. She did not know what else to do. Years later, historians would study the human-Valthari War as a turning point in galactic civilization. The old order of powerful species dominating weaker ones had ended. The assumption that military might made right had been shattered. A new era of genuine cooperation had begun, enforced by humanity's quiet presence and long memory. On the rebuilt world of New Helsinki, a monument stood in the central plaza of the capital city. It was a simple black wall engraved with 47 million names. At its base, carved in 100 galactic languages, were words that visitors read in silence. Never again, never forgotten. Ambassador Webb, now elderly and retired, visited the memorial every year on the anniversary of the attack. She would stand before the wall until sunset, reading names she had never been able to forget. Sometimes other humans joined her. Sometimes aliens came too, species that had once considered humanity beneath notice. Admiral Tanaka had returned to Mars after the war. She maintained a small garden near her daughter's grave. She rarely spoke of what she had done. The weight of it was not something words could carry. When reporters asked her if humanity had been too harsh, too violent, too ruthless, she always gave the same answer. We showed them exactly what we were capable of. Then we showed them we chose not to be that way. The first part taught them fear. The second part taught them respect. Both lessons were necessary. The galaxy had learned. Humanity hoped they would never need to teach it again. But they kept the black ships ready, just in case.